People keep asking me why my family went silent in that pediatrician's office. They think it was because of the test results. It wasn't. The test results only told us what my grandson had been breathing. What silenced my son was the photograph the doctor placed beside them, the one showing where that little boy had been sleeping during weekend visits. A room with no window that opened. A vent packed with gray dust. A dark stain climbing the baseboard behind a child's pillow. And my grandson, 8 years old, sitting on the edge of the exam table with his sneakers swinging, looking at his father like he had done something wrong by telling the truth. That was the moment I stopped hoping my son would remember how to be decent. And that was the day I decided the house he called his inheritance would never belong to him. But I cannot start in that doctor's office. Because if I do, you might think I was an angry old man looking for revenge. I wasn't. I was a grandfather who had finally understood that love without boundaries can become a key in the wrong person's hand. Welcome to Wise Dad Stories. These are stories about fathers and grandfathers who were patient, not weak. Men who gave quietly, forgave quietly, and then, when the truth could no longer be ignored, answered with dignity instead of noise. If stories like this speak to you, stay with me and tell me where you are listening from. I always like knowing where the Wise Dad family has gathered today. My name is Harold Mercer. I was 69 years old when this happened, retired from 38 years in heating and air work. I installed furnaces in January, fixed air conditioners in August, crawled through attics where the air felt like soup, and learned early that most problems start small before anyone admits they are problems. A loose wire, a clogged filter, a hairline crack in a heat exchanger, a man too proud to say he needs help, a child coughing because adults are too busy defending themselves to look at the room he sleeps in. I was married for 43 years to Evelyn Mercer. She had a laugh that made people straighten up and smile whether they wanted to or not. She taught 4th grade until her knees gave out, and she believed every child needed 3 things before anything else: a clean bed, a full stomach, and one adult who would believe them the first time. Evelyn died 3 winters before all this, after a slow illness that took her voice before it took the rest of her. During those last months, she kept a small yellow notebook beside her recliner. At first I thought she was writing grocery lists or notes for me, because that was Evelyn. Even when she was the one suffering, she worried I would forget dish soap. After she passed, I found pages filled with names, dates, recipes, little reminders, and a few sentences I could not read without sitting down. One page said, "If Ryan ever forgets that children come before pride, choose the child." Ryan was our only son. I did not know then how much I would need that sentence. Ryan had not always been selfish. That is important to say. He was not born cruel. As a boy, he followed me around with a plastic toolbox and asked more questions than any human being could answer before coffee. He loved his mother fiercely. He once slept on the floor beside her bed after her first surgery because he said nurses could not be expected to know how she liked her blanket tucked. And for a while, after his own divorce, I saw that same tenderness in him as a father. The first winter Ryan moved into the Sycamore Lane house, Ethan caught an ear infection during one of his weekend visits. Rachel called me on Sunday morning, worried because Ryan had not answered her first 2 calls. I drove over thinking I might find carelessness. Instead, I found my son sitting on the edge of Ethan's bed, still wearing yesterday's jeans, holding a plastic medicine cup in one hand and a damp washcloth in the other. The room was blue then, freshly painted. Ryan had painted it himself, badly in the corners but carefully around the window trim. Evelyn had helped choose the dinosaur sheets before she died. Little green brontosauruses marching across the bedspread like they had somewhere important to be. Ryan had written the medicine times on a yellow sticky note and stuck it to the lamp. 8, 12, 4. He had missed sleep to keep his son comfortable. When Ethan whimpered, Ryan touched his forehead the way Evelyn used to touch his when he was small. "You're all right, buddy," he whispered. "Dad's here." I stood in the doorway and felt something ease inside me. Because that was the Ryan I wanted to believe in. That was the Ryan I kept defending later, even when the evidence started telling me not to. A man does not lose faith in his child all at once. He loses it fighting the truth one memory at a time. By 42, Ryan had become a man who talked about responsibility the way some men talk about weather. Often, loudly, and mostly when it costs them nothing. He had been divorced for 2 years from a good woman named Rachel. They had one son, my grandson Ethan. Ethan was 8, thin as a reed, bright-eyed, careful with people's feelings in a way children should not have to be. He loved dinosaurs, cinnamon toast, and sitting beside me in my garage while I sharpened mower blades or sorted screws into jars. After the divorce, Ryan moved into that small brick house on Sycamore Lane. That house belonged to me. Evelyn and I had bought it years earlier when the neighborhood was still quiet and the maple trees were young. We had planned to rent it out for retirement income. Then Ryan's marriage fell apart. His credit was bruised, and he told me he needed a place where Ethan could visit on weekends without feeling like his father had failed. So I handed him the key. No lease at first, no market rent, no lecture. Just a key and a father's hope. Get steady, I told him. Pay the utilities. Keep the place clean. Make sure Ethan has a room that feels like his. Ryan hugged me in the driveway that day. I still remember it because he smelled like aftershave and rain, and for one moment, he was my boy again. He said, "I won't forget this, Dad." But forgetting is not always sudden. Sometimes it happens one convenience at a time. At first, Ryan kept the house well enough. He painted Ethan's room blue. I bought the bunk bed because Ethan wanted one, even though he was an only child. Evelyn picked out the dinosaur sheets and said every boy deserved a bedspread that made bedtime feel like an adventure. After she died, I kept helping. I paid the property taxes that first year because Ryan said his hours had been cut. I replaced the water heater and did not ask him for a dime. I covered Ethan's summer camp when Ryan said Rachel was being difficult about expenses. I even co-signed a used truck for Ryan after his old one gave up on the interstate, though my attorney warned me that helping an adult child with transportation is sometimes just a slower way of buying trouble. I did not keep a ledger for love. But love kept receipts whether I wanted it to or not. The first small disrespect came at Thanksgiving. We were at my daughter Claire's house. Claire is Ryan's older sister, steady as sunrise, a nurse with the kind of face that notices everything and says little until she has to. Ryan arrived late with his new wife, Tessa, a woman who smiled with only half her mouth and had a way of calling insults just being practical. Ethan came in behind them wearing a sweater too thin for the weather. I said, "Buddy, where's your coat?" Ryan answered before Ethan could. He keeps losing things. At some point, kids have to learn consequences. Ethan looked down at his shoes. Claire went to her hall closet and brought him one of her son's old jackets without making a scene. That was Claire's way. Later, at the table, Ryan told everyone he was basically managing Dad's property now. He said it with a laugh, as though it was a harmless joke. I looked at him over my coffee. "You're living in my property," I said mildly. He waved a hand. "You know what I mean. It'll all be mine one day anyway." The room got quiet for a second. I felt Claire's eyes move toward me. Evelyn would have said something. Not harshly, just enough to straighten the air. But I was tired, and it was Thanksgiving, and Ethan was sitting 2 chairs down, carefully cutting his turkey into squares. So I let it pass. That was my first mistake. Not because every foolish sentence needs punishment. Because sometimes silence teaches the wrong lesson. Over the next few months, Ryan's jokes became statements. He started calling Sycamore Lane our family house in front of people. He told Tessa's brother he was waiting on Dad to simplify the paperwork. He asked me twice whether I had considered adding him to the deed to avoid probate headaches. The first time I said, "My attorney has it handled." The second time, he smiled and said, "Dad, attorneys love making old men feel important." I remember that line because Ethan heard it. We were in my kitchen. The clock above the stove said 6 to 23. Ethan was drawing a stegosaurus at the table, and his crayon stopped moving when Ryan said old men. I could have snapped. Instead, I poured Ryan coffee. A man can be calm and still be wounded. Those are not opposites. Around that time, Ethan started getting sick after weekend visits. At first, it was ordinary things: a cough on Sunday night, a stuffy nose Monday morning, red eyes, headaches, sometimes a rash along the side of his neck. Rachel called me one Tuesday and asked whether Ethan seemed sick when he was with me. "He was fine Wednesday," I said, ran around the yard for an hour. She hesitated. "He's fine all week. Then he comes back from Ryan's house and sounds like he spent 2 days in a cellar." I did not like the feeling that moved through me then. I had worked around bad air my whole life: damp basements, moldy ducts, furnace filters so packed they looked like gray carpet. I knew what a house could do to lungs when nobody respected it. So I drove by Sycamore Lane the next Saturday afternoon. I told myself I was just being a grandfather. Ryan's truck was in the driveway. Tessa's car was there too. The front blinds were drawn, though it was a bright day. On the curb were 3 black trash bags and an old section of drywall with dark spotting along one edge. I sat there with both hands on the steering wheel. Then I kept driving. That is the part I regret most. Not because I did nothing forever, because I did not do something sooner. The next weekend, Ethan came to my house on Sunday evening after Ryan dropped him off for Rachel to pick up. That was the arrangement sometimes, because my house sat halfway between them. He walked into my kitchen and tried to smile. His cheeks were pale. His eyes watered. He carried his overnight backpack like it weighed more than he did. I knelt slowly because my knees make their own opinions known now. "You all right, partner?" He nodded. "Just tired." His voice had a rasp in it. Ryan came in behind him, looking at his phone. "He's fine. Rachel babies him." I looked at Ethan. "Where did you sleep this weekend?" Ryan laughed too quickly. "In a bed, Dad. What kind of question is that?" Ethan's fingers tightened around the backpack strap. I saw it. Ryan saw me see it. Then Tessa stepped into the kitchen and put a hand on Ethan's shoulder, not gently. "We're reorganizing," she said. "His room is full of business inventory right now. He likes camping downstairs." Downstairs. The word landed in my chest like a dropped wrench. Sycamore Lane had a half-finished basement. I knew every inch of it. Concrete floor, old laundry sink, low ceiling. A utility closet where I had once warned Ryan not to store cardboard because the back wall wicked moisture after heavy rain. I said, "The basement isn't a bedroom." Ryan's smile thinned. "Dad, don't start. It's temporary." Ethan coughed into his sleeve. Not a little cough. A deep, dry cough that made his shoulders fold inward. And for one painful second, I saw 2 versions of my son standing in the same kitchen. The younger father who had stayed up all night with a medicine cup beside Ethan's blue bed. And this father, who could hear that cough and still call it temporary. That was when something inside me shifted. Not broke. Shifted. Rachel arrived a few minutes later. She took one look at Ethan and her face changed. "What happened?" Ryan rolled his eyes. "Here we go." Rachel knelt beside Ethan and touched his forehead. He was not like this Friday. Tessa sighed. "Maybe your apartment has something. You always blame Ryan." Ryan looked at me then, not as a son asking for help, but as a man warning another man to stay out of his way. "Dad," he said, "tell her he's fine." That was the second mistake he made. He thought my love for him required me to lie about what I could see. I did not raise my voice. I only said, "He is not fine." The kitchen went still. Ryan stared at me. Rachel lifted Ethan's backpack onto her shoulder, thanked me quietly, and left with him. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Evelyn's yellow notebook open in front of me. The page about choosing the child seemed darker than the others, as if the ink had waited for me. The next morning, Rachel took Ethan to his pediatrician, Dr. Anika Patel. Dr. Patel had been treating Ethan since he was small. She was the kind of doctor who listened before she typed, which is rarer than it should be. Rachel called me afterward and asked whether I would come to the follow-up appointment on Thursday. "Ryan will be there," she said. "I know. I think he'll deny everything." I know that too. There are moments when a man stops hoping and starts seeing. Thursday morning, I put on a clean shirt, shaved carefully, and placed 3 things in a folder: a copy of the property deed, photographs I had taken of the old drywall on the curb, and a note from my HVAC files about the basement moisture problem from years earlier. I did not know if I would need them, but I had spent my life learning that when something smells wrong, you bring the records. The pediatrician's office smelled like hand sanitizer and crayons. In the waiting room, Ethan sat beside Rachel, swinging his feet. Ryan sat across from them with Tessa, his arms folded, looking insulted before anyone had accused him. When I walked in, Ryan glanced at the folder in my hand. "What's that?" "Paper," I said. He snorted. "Always with the paperwork." I sat beside Ethan. He leaned against my arm. That small weight nearly broke me. Dr. Patel called us back. Her exam room had a mural of cartoon animals on the wall, all smiling as though no adult had ever failed them. She checked Ethan's breathing, asked him questions gently, and then turned to the rest of us. "I'm concerned about the pattern," she said. Ryan shifted. "What pattern?" Dr. Patel looked at her chart. Symptoms worsening after weekend stays and improving during the week. Cough, eye irritation, skin reaction, headaches. This does not prove cause by itself, but it is enough to ask about environmental exposure. Tessa gave a small laugh. "Environmental exposure? He plays outside." Dr. Patel did not smile back. "Where does Ethan sleep during weekend visits?" Ryan opened his mouth. Ethan answered first. "Downstairs." Ryan turned sharply. "Buddy." Dr. Patel held up one hand, not dramatically, just enough. "Let him answer." Ethan looked at his knees. On the fold-out chair, by the big freezer. Rachel closed her eyes. I felt my hands curl once, then relax. Dr. Patel asked, "Is there a window?" Ethan shrugged. "There's a little one, but Dad said not to touch it because bugs get in." "Any smells?" He nodded. "Wet socks. And paint." End quote. Tessa's face changed color. Ryan said, "This is ridiculous. He's exaggerating." Dr. Patel reached into a clear plastic sleeve and removed 2 photographs Rachel had sent her the night before. I had not seen them yet. One showed Ethan's pajama sleeve with gray dust along the cuff. The other showed the place where he had slept. A folded foam chair, a thin blanket, a plastic storage bin as a nightstand. Behind it, a baseboard stained dark in a way I knew too well. Dr. Patel laid the photos on the counter. The room became so quiet I could hear the air vent ticking overhead. Ryan did not speak. Tessa did not speak. Rachel covered her mouth. Ethan looked at his father. That was the silence people ask me about. Not the silence of surprise. The silence of people realizing a child had told the truth in a room where adults had planned to manage it. Dr. Patel was careful. Good doctors are. She did not shout. She did not accuse anyone of a crime. She said Ethan needed to avoid that sleeping environment until it was inspected and corrected. She documented her concerns. She recommended evaluation for allergies and respiratory irritation. She told us that any custody or visitation questions belonged to the parents and the court. Then she looked at Ryan and said one sentence I will never forget. "Whatever disagreement the adults are having, this child needs a safe place to sleep." Ryan stared at the floor. But shame is only useful when it changes a man. His did not. In the parking lot, Ryan caught my arm. "What did you give Rachel?" I looked down at his hand until he removed it. I gave her the truth. His jaw tightened. "You're taking her side?" "I'm taking Ethan's side." Tessa stepped closer. "Harold, you need to be careful. Ryan has rights." I nodded. "He does. So does Ethan." Ryan laughed then, but there was no humor in it. "You know what this is really about? Rachel wants more control, and you're helping her because you never liked that I moved on." That was ugly enough. Then he made it worse. "And don't forget, Dad, that house is part of my future. You start making legal trouble around it, you hurt your own family." I looked at my son in that parking lot, standing under a gray March sky, and finally saw the plan clearly. He was not only defending a bad choice, he was defending the house. He wanted the house untouched, unquestioned, and eventually transferred to him. He wanted me quiet because my name was still on the deed. He wanted Rachel dismissed because her questions threatened his image. He wanted Ethan brave enough to visit but not brave enough to speak. That was when love changed shape. It did not disappear. It became a boundary. I went home without arguing. At my kitchen table, I opened Evelyn's yellow notebook again. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator humming and rain tapping the window over the sink. I turned to the page where she had written about Ryan and children and pride. Below that sentence, in smaller handwriting, was another line I had forgotten. Do not let our grandson inherit anyone's cowardice. I sat there a long time. I thought about Ryan at 6 years old, asleep in the back seat after Little League. I thought about him as a young father, sitting beside Ethan's bed with tired eyes and a medicine cup in his hand. I thought about Evelyn sewing a patch on his Cub Scout shirt. I thought about Ethan on that exam table, believing honesty had betrayed his father. Then I closed the notebook. I was not angry anymore. I was decided. The next morning was Friday. At 8:15, I called my attorney, Marlene Whitcomb, who had handled Evelyn's estate and had known me long enough to skip the soft talk. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Harold, we are going to move carefully. Not dramatically. Carefully. That's how I want it. You own Sycamore Lane outright?" "Yes." "Any written lease?" "No formal lease. He pays utilities. No rent. Then we document, inspect, give proper notice, and protect you from doing anything that looks retaliatory or rash." That was why I trusted Marlene. She never treated the law like a hammer. She treated it like a level. By noon, she had sent Ryan a formal notice requesting access for inspection of the property due to documented health and safety concerns involving a minor child. It was polite. It was plain. It gave proper time. Ryan called me 6 times. I did not answer until the 7th. When I picked up, he did not say hello. "You sent me a legal notice?" "Yes." "Your own son?" "My property. My grandson." He cursed once. I waited. Then he said, "You're making a huge mistake." "No," I said. "I made those already." On Monday morning, a certified home inspector met me, Marlene's assistant, and Ryan at Sycamore Lane. Ryan had cleaned. I will give him that. Men who hide things often mistake the smell of bleach for proof. But houses remember. The basement still smelled damp beneath the cleaner. The back wall tested wet. The vent near the sleeping area was packed with dust and debris. Behind the foam chair, the baseboard had visible staining. In the utility closet, stacked beside the furnace, were paint cans, cardboard boxes, and a cracked plastic tub of old cleaning chemicals. The inspector took photographs. Ryan stood with his arms crossed. "It's a basement," he said. "Basements smell like basements." I looked at him. Children should not sleep like stored furniture. His face hardened. That afternoon, Marlene sent a notice to cure the unsafe conditions and prohibited use of the basement as a sleeping area. It did not evict him. It did not threaten him. It stated facts, deadlines, and consequences. That is the thing about paperwork. When done right, it does not need to shout. On Tuesday, I stopped the monthly transfer I had been sending Ryan for Ethan's weekend expenses. It was $400 every month, automatic from my checking account. When I set it up, Ryan had told me it helped with food, clothes, and activities for Ethan. I believed him, because believing your child is easier than auditing him. But after the pediatrician's office, I asked for receipts. Ryan sent none. So Tuesday at 9:12, I canceled the transfer. The confirmation email made no sound, but it felt like a door closing. On Wednesday, I removed Ryan as an authorized user from my emergency credit card. Years earlier, I had given him a card for true emergencies, and he had slowly taught himself that emergencies included tires, dinners, online purchases, and once, a weekend cabin deposit he claimed was non-refundable. The bank representative asked whether I wanted a replacement card issued. Yes, I said. New number. My hand did not shake. On Thursday, I met Marlene to revise my estate documents. This was not a sudden decision. Evelyn and I had already built most of the structure before she passed. Ryan was listed as a partial beneficiary, and he had been named successor trustee if Claire could not serve. That changed. Claire remained successor trustee. Ryan was removed from any position of authority. His direct inheritance was replaced with a conditional trust that could only be used for documented counseling, debt repayment handled by the trustee, or family reunification work, if he chose to pursue it. He would not receive control of property or cash. Are you sure? Marlene asked. I looked at Evelyn's notebook on the table beside me. No, I said honestly, but I'm certain. There is a difference. On Friday, I created the Ethan Mercer Health and Education Trust. Sycamore Lane would be transferred into that trust after Ryan's occupancy ended through proper legal process. The house would be repaired, rented at fair market value, and the income would support Ethan's medical needs, education, and eventually, if he grew into the kind of man Evelyn believed children could become, his first home. Ryan had called Sycamore Lane his inheritance. He was wrong. It became his son's protection. The legal process took longer than people in stories like this sometimes pretend. Nobody was thrown out overnight. No sheriff appeared the next morning. No judge slammed a gavel because a grandfather was sad. The law is not quick, but it is patient. Ryan ignored the first deadline. Then he argued through email. Then he claimed I had promised him the house verbally. Then Marlene sent him copies of the deed, the tax records, and 3 years of expenses I had paid without asking him for reimbursement. Property taxes, insurance, water heater, roof repair, basement moisture inspection, the dinosaur bunk bed. That last one was not legal proof of ownership, of course, but it was proof of something. Ryan had not built a home for his son. He had occupied one I kept holding together. 3 weeks later, Rachel's attorney requested my statement and records for family court. I gave them. I did not ask for any outcome. I did not decide custody. That was not my place. But I told the truth. I wrote that I owned Sycamore Lane. I wrote that Ethan had told the pediatrician he slept in the basement. I attached the inspection report. I attached Dr. Patel's written recommendation that Ethan avoid that environment until corrected. I attached proof of my payments to maintain the property and support Ethan. Before I signed the statement, I sat in my truck outside the notary's office for 10 minutes. Not because I doubted the facts, because I knew signing it would hurt my son. Then I remembered Ethan's little feet swinging from the exam table. I went inside. The notary was a young man with a trimmed beard and kind eyes. He watched me sign and said, "Hard day?" I capped the pen. "Hard few years." He stamped the paper and slid it back gently. Sometimes protecting a child costs more than people admit. A stranger should not have understood my family better than my son did. But there we were. The first visible consequence came on a Saturday in April. Ryan's emergency card declined at a sporting goods store. I know because he called me from the parking lot. "Did you cancel the card?" "Yes. I was buying Ethan cleats." "No," I said. "Ethan already has cleats. I bought them last month. You were buying a fishing reel. The card alert still comes to my phone." Silence. Then he said, "You're spying on me?" "No, I'm reading what my money paid for." He hung up. The second consequence came when the formal occupancy termination notice arrived. Marlene had followed the required steps. Ryan had time. He had options. He could correct the conditions, negotiate a lease, or move. Instead, he came to my house. It was 7:14 in the evening. I remember because the kitchen clock Evelyn loved had just chimed its soft little bell. I was washing a coffee mug when Ryan walked in without knocking, using the spare key I had forgotten he still had. He threw the notice on my table. "You're kicking me out?" I dried my hands. "I am ending an arrangement you stopped respecting. This is because of Rachel." "No." "Because of Tessa?" "No." "Then what?" I looked at him for a long moment. Because your son was sleeping beside a wet wall while you protected your pride. His face twisted. You make it sound like I hurt him on purpose. I think you cared more about being questioned than being careful. That landed harder because it was true. He pulled out a chair and sat, suddenly less loud. You don't know what it's like, he said, trying to rebuild, trying to have everyone watching, waiting for you to fail. I softened then. A father's heart is a stubborn old thing. I do know what failure feels like, I said. I failed your mother plenty. I failed you some too. But I never made you sleep in my failure and call it camping. He looked away. For 1 second I thought maybe shame had found the right door. Then he said, So what? You're giving the house to Rachel now? There it was. Not Ethan. Not safety. The house. I pulled the blue folder from the counter, the same kind with metal tabs that always catch your thumb. I laid one document on the table. This is the transfer plan for Sycamore Lane. Ryan leaned forward. I watched him read enough to understand. His face went flat. You put it in Ethan's name? In trust for Ethan. Managed by Claire and Marlene's firm until he is old enough. You had no right. I owned it. I'm your son. Yes. His voice rose. I was supposed to get that house. I said the words slowly because I wanted him to hear every one. You were supposed to keep your son safe in it. The kitchen seemed to hold its breath. Ryan stood. You're choosing him over me. No, I said. I'm choosing the child over the grown man who forgot he was one. He left without another word. This time, I changed the locks. Not to Sycamore Lane, that required process. To my own house. The following month, Ryan moved out of Sycamore Lane before the final legal deadline. He told relatives I had thrown him into the street. That was not true. Tessa's parents had a finished guest suite, and Ryan had enough income for an apartment if he stopped treating other people's generosity like a salary. Claire oversaw the repairs. The basement was professionally cleaned. The moisture issue was corrected. The old vent was replaced. The walls were sealed properly. The room Ethan had once slept in was never called a bedroom again. His upstairs room, the blue one with the dinosaur sheets, had been filled with Tessa's online boutique inventory. Boxes of leggings, shipping envelopes, a ring light, a desk where Ethan's bookshelf used to be. When Claire sent me a photograph, I sat down before opening the second one. The second photo showed the inside of the closet door. There, still faint beneath a strip of packing tape, were pencil marks Evelyn had made measuring Ethan's height when he was 5. Beside one mark she had written, "Getting tall, getting kind." I drove over that evening. The house was empty. My footsteps sounded different in rooms without furniture. In Ethan's old bedroom, I stood before that closet door and touched Evelyn's handwriting with 2 fingers. That was the first time I cried. Not in the doctor's office. Not in the attorney's office. There. Because a room remembers what people try to erase. By summer, the court had adjusted Ryan's overnight visits until he could show suitable housing and complete certain requirements. I will not pretend that was easy. Ethan loved his father. Children often do, even when fathers make it hard. Ryan saw him in supervised and daytime settings for a while. That was between Ryan, Rachel, and the court. My role was simpler. I showed up. I took Ethan fishing at Miller's Pond. I taught him how to change a furnace filter, because a Mercer man ought to know that air matters. I took him for pancakes on the mornings when he looked sad. One Saturday, while we were sorting screws in the garage, Ethan asked, "Grandpa, is Dad mad at me?" That question should be illegal for a child to have to ask. I set down the jar in my hand. "No, buddy. Your dad is upset with grown-up problems. Those are not yours to carry. But I told Dr. Patel about downstairs." "You told the truth." He looked at me carefully. "Did that get Dad in trouble?" I pulled a stool beside him and sat. Sometimes the truth does not get people in trouble. Sometimes it shows the trouble that was already there. He thought about that. Then he nodded like a small judge. "Grandma would say that." I smiled. She probably just did. The final thing I had to do involved Evelyn's yellow notebook. Inside the back cover, tucked behind a folded recipe for apple cake, was an envelope addressed in her handwriting. For Ryan, when he remembers. I had seen it after she died, but I had never opened it. I still have not. For a while, I thought about giving it to him after Sycamore Lane was transferred into the trust. Part of me wanted one last emotional lever, one final sentence from his mother to break through what my words could not. But love is not a crowbar. So I placed the envelope in Marlene's safe with written instructions. Ryan can have it when he completes the steps laid out in the trust documents: counseling, documented financial responsibility, safe housing for Ethan, and one written apology to his son, with no excuses in it. Not to me. To Ethan. A child should not have to wonder whether the truth made him disloyal. The first time Ryan learned about the envelope, he called me late at night. His voice was different, smaller. "Dad," Marlene said, "Mom left me something." She did. "What is it?" "A letter." "What does it say?" "I don't know." "You didn't read it?" "No." "Why not?" "Because it was not written to me." He was quiet a long time. Then he asked, "Why won't you just give it to me?" I looked across my kitchen at Evelyn's empty chair. "Because your mother wrote your name on it, not the man you became when you put boxes in your son's room and called the basement good enough." He breathed into the phone. "That's cruel." "No," I said softly. "Cruel would be using her words to wound you. I'm using her trust to invite you back to yourself." He did not answer. So I gave him the sentence that had been waiting in me for months. "I love you, Ryan. I will always love you. But love and access are not the same thing." His breath caught once. Then the line went dead. People ask whether Ryan changed after that. The honest answer is, not all at once. Life is not a sermon where the guilty man falls to his knees before the music swells. For a while, he was angry. He blamed Rachel. He blamed Tessa. He blamed me. He said Claire had poisoned me against him. He told relatives I had signed everything over to a child out of spite. Claire answered only once. She said, "No, Dad signed everything away from neglect." That quieted most people. Tessa left before Christmas. I do not celebrate that. Marriages are complicated, and I was not inside theirs. But I will say this. After she left, Ryan stopped speaking in that polished, practical tone that had made cruelty sound organized. He sounded tired. Tired can become honest if a man lets it. The next spring, Ryan asked if he could come by my house. I said yes. He arrived with no Tessa, no lawyer, no anger in his shoulders, just a man holding a paper bag from the bakery his mother used to like. We sat on the porch because the weather had finally softened. He looked older. Children think parents do not notice that. We do. He said, "I was ashamed." I waited. He swallowed. I knew the basement wasn't right. I kept telling myself it was temporary. Then when people questioned me, I got defensive because fixing it meant admitting I'd already let it happen. That was the first true thing he had said in a long time. I nodded. He looked at his hands. I put my inventory in Ethan's room because Tessa said the upstairs light was better for photos. I told myself Ethan didn't care. He cared. I know. The wind moved through the maple tree beside the porch. Ryan said, "Do you remember when Ethan had that ear infection? That first winter?" I remember. I stayed up all night because I was scared his fever would climb. I know. His face folded in a way I had not seen since he was a boy. I don't know when I stopped being that father. I looked at him and saw both men at once, the young father with the medicine cup, and the man who had later defended a basement because admitting the truth cost too much pride. That father is not gone, I said, but he is not enough as a memory. Ethan needs him as a habit. Ryan covered his eyes with one hand. For once, I did not rescue him from the silence. He needed to sit in it. After a while, he said, "I'm writing the apology." "To Ethan?" "Yes." "No excuses?" He gave a tired smile. "No excuses." I looked at him and saw both men at once. The boy with the plastic toolbox, and the father who had failed his own child. That is the hard part of loving family. You remember who they were while dealing with who they are. I hope you finish it, I said. He nodded. Me too. He did not ask about the house. Not once. That mattered more than any speech he could have made. Ethan is 10 now. He breathes better. He is taller than the Mark Evelyn labeled, getting kind. And he still corrects me when I call a brachiosaurus a brontosaurus, though I do it sometimes, just to hear him sigh like a professor. Sycamore Lane is rented to a young couple with a baby. The rent goes into Ethan's trust. Claire sends me the statements, though I rarely need to look at them. I know enough. The house is doing what a house should do, sheltering someone without making a child pay for an adult's pride. Ryan has not received Evelyn's letter yet. He is closer. That is all I will say. Some people think I was too hard. They say a father should help his son, not set traps with lawyers and trusts. But there was no trap. There was a deed. There was a doctor's note. There was a child's cough. There was a room with no proper air and a father who wanted inheritance more than inspection. I did help my son. I stopped helping him lie to himself. And I helped my grandson more. That is the part I can live with. Because a wise dad does not need to shout when the truth already has his signature. He simply closes the door they misused, opens one for the child who needed him, and lets the paperwork finish the sentence. Now tell me honestly, was I too hard or not hard enough? I read every comment. And if this story reminded you of someone who mistook kindness for weakness, subscribe to Wise Dad Stories. There is always another quiet truth waiting to be told.